How you doing? I got started a minute early today. Better than usually a minute late or something. Today, I thought it'd be a good lot of fun to talk about how to sell a watch, especially for those who haven't sold them. And the other part of it is how to ship them. Sometimes selling them is easier than shipping them. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Um, while we're waiting, a couple things that have to do with selling. The good news, of course, we talked about earlier, if it's good. Hi, Eric. Is that when we no longer have a 39% tariff on Swiss watches, which was crazy to begin with. Now it's 15. It used to be 0 6 months ago, but boy, it's almost been a year. Anyhow, enough of that. We could concentrate on the good part. So, what would be some things? Hi, Al. I'll get back to you on that thing that you had. I've just been real busy today. Hi, Mark, John, Brian. Good to see you guys. Um, we're talking about one of the things I thought we'd talk about was what is the best way to sell your watch. I'm sure prices will remain the same instead of rolling back. Probably they will. Yeah, they have. Prices will, I think, will roll back. The people in the U.S. who had Swiss watches, they don't, they'll be all set. Damon, you're a guy I need to contact about getting your watch. I think we can ship it now. Hey, Von Cruel, how you doing? We're talking about shipping today too. Yeah, you're probably right, Brian. We'll see. Anyone know what percentage places like? I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. They do it in other ways when you sell it. Trying to think. When you buy it, the buyers, what they do is that they add on like a point or two to the sales tax. And so, like, I think here in Connecticut, our sales tax is 6.5% or something like that. And so they add another penny onto it or something. And so instead of paying 6%, we're paying 6.5 or 7.5 or even 8. I don't know, something like that. And so they, when you're talking about some of these higher price watches, that can be a lot of money. Um, so eBay has approximately 9%. Chrono has around 4. That sounds about right. I've only sold one thing on Chrono. I've never sold anything on eBay. I bought from both of them, though. For selling watches, I was thinking of the different ways to sell them and starting off with High 911. And I was thinking of immediately of Chrono 24 or eBay. But the best way to sell a watch is sell it to somebody okay, or somebody in a watch group or something like that. The reason for that, you don't have to worry about taxes. You don't have to worry about all kinds of things, especially if it comes from overseas, because then there are tariffs and there are other kinds of taxes. One of the best deals I ever made, I don't think I made any money off of it, but it was one of the best deals. Guy wanted to buy my watch. I knew him, and he said, "Hey, I'm on the way up to Massachusetts. Maybe we could meet, and I could pick up the watch on the way up there." I said, "Great." And so we met. There was a coffee shop by the interstate, and so I thought, well, I'll meet you there. So we met there, had a good talk with him, gave him everything, so I didn't have to worry about shipping. That is the best possible way. The problem with that, of course, you can't. You got to know everybody in the world. But that would be my number one way of how to sell a watch. Brian, actually, it's not. They've done it a little different than that, Brian. Let's say that you buy there's a seller in Switzerland, and you have a Roland Murphy watch, which is an American watch. You wouldn't have to pay anything. It's on what I found out, because I was one of the few people I know that was dumb enough to pay 39% on a Swiss watch. It's the origin of the watch, according to this to what they're doing now. And so instead of 39%, it's only 15%. So that's so you wouldn't pay it actually, which is ironic. A seller in Switzerland could have all of the American watches he wanted. You wouldn't have to pay any tariffs on them, which is sort of weird. Hi, Ben. What's good? What's on your wrist, huh? Okay. Well, I love to show my watch off. This is my Etude number 2, and with a Ming bracelet. Okay, enough of that. Today, I wear one of my homemade watches. It's a ST 3600 movement clone of a 6497-2. I happen to have it. I still got to get it fixed before Thanksgiving. I just have to do this one last part on it up here. But this is same thing, except it's a 6498 clone instead of 96. Hi, users, stuff. I have a bunch of low-cost watches. Boxes and papers are gone. How do I sell them in bulk? Seiko's, Bulova, and some micros. You know, they have these swap meets. That's what, if you can find one. One of my favorite groups is the Oklahoma group. Here they got this great big old state that probably is big as the country of Switzerland, and yet they have these great meetings. They have people from all over come, and they go to the Oklahoma meetings. Now, that would be a great place to buy and sell watches. Okay, Facebook Marketplace has watch collections for sale in bulk. There you go. Great idea. Hi, Eric. I have my SIN 556 on. Eric? What's the rest of the story? I made one ETA 6498 clone, and I like it, but it needs a new crown. It's got a big honking diamond crown that digs into my skin. You do need a new crown. I've been looking at SIN, Eric. How do you like it? Most of the people I know with SINs have very nice things to say about it. My favorite sort of what we'll call a mid-price German watch is Tutima. Because I knew the guy, one of the guys who used to teach the watchmakers at Tutima. He had a lot of good things to say about it. How not to get ripped off selling a watch, pitfalls. Well, how not to get ripped off. I tell you, they're unscrupulous dealers. They could rip you off. That's one thing to avoid. If you go through a dealer, I know a couple. Mark and I know the same one. There are probably some other ones too. I think you have to depend on a lot of things. One thing I think is very important for us watch collectors to communicate. Say, look, I wouldn't go to those guys because they're crooked as a dog's hind leg. Or on the other hand, somebody who's really good. My experience, and that's all I've got, is the experience I've had the best experience I've had is selling through auctions, not buying through auctions, but selling through auctions. good auctions, and by good ones, I mean ones like Christie's, Sotheby's, and Phillips. I've sold 2 watches that way. If you have a watch a little on the higher end, go to them. At least my experience has been you do much better. This Vacheron Constantin that I had, it was a 1972. I got it, a long time ago, and I realized it was just sitting in my case. I wasn't using it. There was nothing wrong with it. And so I thought, I'll try selling it at an auction. Ended up with double what I paid for it. And, so it was, but that's that kind of watch. I did the same thing with Phillips, sold my FP Joint Resonance, did spectacularly well. I'll say that and no more. So, selling a watch, if you have a good watch, little upper price, that would be on one of the top ones. Now, a lot of people sell it on the something wiki, Catawiki, I think is what it's called. And I've heard good things about that too. People have really good luck. Have any of you sold yours or bought one really on Bezel? I get a lot of stuff from them all the time, and they seem interesting because the thing about Bezel is that the seller is the one who pays, not the buyer. Um, yeah, that would be right. What happens if you buy a watch from a top, company like one of the, I guess I'll call them the big 3, Christie's, Sotheby's, and Phillips. If you sell it on that, the buyer pays a 25% what they call a premium. In other words, so they're very popular though, and I think one of the reasons is that you don't have to think too much about it. All you have to do is be rich and outbid the other guy. So that's that. The Watch Exchange subedit is a pretty good place to sell. I've had 7 successful transactions, sell and buy on there. Thank you, Andrew. That's good to know. There's another place, geez, that I belong to, call it something like Manos or something like that. And apparently they're on Facebook and they have selling back and forth. From what I've heard, that's a very good place too. And I don't think there are any fees for anybody going, coming or going. You just put your amount up there. The way they do it, it's really funny. Facebook does not like at all people buying and selling without their involvement. I mean, you put an ad up there with a Facebook ad, then they'll get a piece of the action. On the other hand, if you do it among each other, there could be a problem with that. And so what people do, instead of put it in text, they put it in graphics. So they put the price in graphics, and that doesn't show up on the AI who keeps an eye on that. Yeah, Brian, I tell you, selling and buying, I never know what I'm gonna get. Like I said, my experience with good watches on one of those auctions houses, I think do quite well on that. Well, Brian, yeah. Yeah, I can't afford to give any more. I've gifted some, believe me, but not many more. Is there a cost when selling through an auction? Not much, okay? Usually, there's not supposed to be any, but sometimes they'll say, "Oh, well, there might be a little or they might not be," and they're really at least that was my experience, and so they tapped me for a little amount, but they tapped the guy who bought it for around 50,000. That was what his premium was. So, me, it was a few thousand, and I didn't care 'cause they brought in so much. Um, but you shouldn't mess around if you have a really good good expensive watch. I wouldn't mess around, with you need a little patience, but I think you'll do a lot better financially on an auction than you would, on eBay or on, Chrono 24. Chrono 24, though, in general, I've been pretty happy with it, tell you the truth. One of the reasons is that if you sell it on Chrono 24, you were asking earlier about how do you keep from being ripped off. What they do is they put your money in escrow. So you say, okay, I'm gonna buy this watch. So they said, all right, it's gonna cost you this much. So you send that to them, and they hold that in escrow until you receive the watch. You get a chance to look at it, and you can either say confirm, yeah, hey, this is what I asked for, or not. I had one case where I bought a watch in Poland, and I think the guy was jerking me around. He first he said, "Well," he said, "Could you just wire me the money? Don't ever do that. Don't ever wire a person just the money." I don't mind wiring like Chrono 24 or through eBay, but if you don't know the person and you just wire them the money, that could be just really not a good idea. On the other hand, I was gonna say that's how we buy all of our watches on Larique. We're wiring money to our banker. Hey, Abdul, how you doing? Andrew, here's info on bezel selling. I bought once and sold once on them. Andrew, what's your did you like them or not like them? What is your opinion of bezel? To me, bezel seems like a very convenient way, and they seem to be going on a lot. Whereas ones, I've had to wait months until they had the right auction to sell the watch that I had. So bezel might be the way to go. No sellers have ever responded to questions on Chrono 24. They have to me, Eric. I've had pretty good luck on that. Now, sometimes they don't. I mean, like, I'll send them a low ball every now and then, and it's like, we're not even gonna, you know, dignify that with a no. But by and large, I've had pretty good luck on that. I I I don't know what kind of messages or who you're sending it to, but you know, that'd be interesting to find out about. The other night, I went to a charity event and they raffled off a new Omega Snoopy Speedmaster. It was $100 for 3 raffle tickets. I didn't win, but I'm sure the guy who did win is loving his new watch. I bet so. $300 for a Snoopy's not bad, or $100. I bought a couple of watches on Chrono 24. So far, fortunately, good communication from both sellers. Yeah, that's been my experience. I usually go for Chrono as the easiest, eBay for the quickest, but not the best prices. Also, the customers who lowball is crazy on eBay. They must have seen me there. I've never shipped a watch to a buyer. What has been the people's experience on that? Okay, let's talk about shipping for a while. I I tell you, I've shipped with EPS, not EPS, UPS, uh, E Federal Express, and, DHL. I've shipped with all 3 of them. I've had both good and terrible experiences with all 3. So I can't recommend them one way or the other. Um, and this is something that don't pay too much attention to me when I tell you this, because you could lose your shirt doing it. And that is, I like sending watches in the US, just in the US, with the mail. I sent it, what's it called? Not special delivery, but priority mail. Send it priority mail. I've never had a problem with it. You don't have to wait all around for it to arrive and things like that. But, that's awfully dangerous. Something can happen. The other thing about getting something signed, if you're shipping a watch and you want some kind of guarantee that the buyer got your watch, then you're gonna have to have them sign for it. And that's the best way to do that if a person is at work, okay, and they can accept it at the reception desk, or sometimes apartments or hotels will have a concierge and they can accept it for you. But I got to tell you, the worst, I hate waiting for FedEx or UPS or DHL when because I've missed them before. And the best I've been able to get, with UPS, there's a place about, I don't know, 10 miles or so from where I live. And they're a UPS store. And so I can have them send it there, and then I don't have to wait around the house for them. The problem is that if something is addressed to you to sign for, and you say, "Oh, take it to the UPS store," in my experience, it took them forever. And so instead of getting it once, it took me for over a week. They had scheduled me in the morning. No, sorry, they scheduled to deliver in the afternoon. So in the morning, I had something to do. My wife had something to do, and neither one of us were available. So then they changed it, and they showed up in the morning, and of course we weren't there. And that kind of stuff drives me absolutely crazy. And that's why I do what you probably shouldn't do, and that is ship it ship it with what is it called? Priority mail. I got to tell you about this one place. See if I have a thing here with it. There was this company, and this has to do with shipping, but not with yeah. These guys right here, they're called watchrepair.net. And what they had, I don't know if you can see it on here. No, I guess not. They have this thing that looks like it belongs in an armored car. It sort of looks like an armored fishing box, a tackle box or something. But it's this one of these rugged looking hard case boxes. Inside is foam, and inside the foam, there's a special compartment you can put your watch in. What they do is that it was like, I think, $39, something like that. You get it. They've already paid for the round trip postage on it, and they do it through UPS. And I tell you, it's very convenient. Again, it's one that I would hope to have delivered at the UPS store rather than to me, because I just don't like waiting around. Yeah, you got something to do. You can't wait for some guy to do it. FedEx used to have these terrible drivers who wouldn't deliver it. I see them, they'd come to my house and they'd keep on going. And what had happened, UPS had put so much pressure on their drivers, it was easy, and they were being tracked. And so they would come by the house even though I was home, they wouldn't bother to knock on the door, and then they would take off, and so then they would say, "Oh, the guy wasn't home." Man, I tell you, I went down to the UPS, to the, FedEx, and I have an account with him and told him, I say, "Look, let me pick it up here." This is told him what happened. After that, it quit happening. Yeah, Andrew, same here. I'm not a professional either. I'm just a but, there's certain really expensive watches. If I sent a really expensive watch to someone, I'd probably send it to have them sign for it, and then they couldn't say, "Oh, well, I paid you the money, I never got the watch." Well, if you have them sign for it, then you know. Yeah, Abdul, I mean, boy, that's a very careful way. Videotape the whole thing. Some drivers are absolute trash. Sometimes there's a problem in the, incentive structure for drivers that may contribute to that behavior. I think what it is, Von Krul, I think you're absolutely right. I think what happens, they say you gotta have so many places to do, and, some poor I always feel sorry for the driver rather than management who's pressuring him to do that, and it's usually upper management. The other part about it, and this is with UPS and, um, FedEx. Man, you got a problem, you end up talking to robots. Either that or you're talking to somebody in Timbuktu that learned how to speak your language day before yesterday, and they're not doing it too well. With me, I've got a hearing loss, so I'm having double trouble on it. Which I hate doing that. I mean, I'm great with, text chats and things like that. Sometimes I have worked out things with, text chats, but just, somebody who's oh, there's another thing too, and I finally did it. If you this is with FedEx, you find out certain places you find out certain special phone numbers for people who handle, especially an international shipment of watches. And you need to find out those numbers because otherwise you end up talking to somebody in Timbuktu rather than someone in, I think, Memphis, Tennessee is where they have their hub. And that's, you want to talk to somebody in Memphis. They come, FedEx planes come from all over the world, but first they go to Memphis and then they decide, okay, then they come back to where we are. I think they have another entry in Newark, New Jersey. So they're, because I know I've seen some getting things out of there. Hey, I tell you something else that was sort of interesting. That one of the big issues that we all probably have at some point is going through customs. One thing I can tell you right away: don't just use regular leather straps, nothing exotic. Otherwise, they'll type. But there's somebody I talked to our customs guy here. I called him, and I think he's you know when they get a call, I think they're expecting something other than what I was asking them about. And it turned out they were very helpful because I was asking. I said, I got all of this stuff when we had sent these watches over for repair, and they sent them back. Uh, Brian Downey and I got a couple of watches that had simply been repaired, and so we were going to guinea. We were two of three guinea pigs that we had who had agreed to take the dials because they were having problems with the dials. So we thought, oh, we'll take it anyway and see what happens. Man, we both got nailed for 400 something bucks a piece. And this was for a repair, and there shouldn't have been anything on that. But what they had done is that the initial tariffs they had for everywhere and so they charged us on that, but we'd already paid for the watch. And now, oh, God knows what they're going to do. So You gotta be careful. If you're having your watch repaired, this is why I'm trying to get it done for in the United States, and I would suggest the same thing if you're in Japan or China or Europe, wherever you are, try to have your, repair job because, man, I'll tell you, the customs, they'll look at your watch and say, "I don't think I don't think it's a repair, I think it's brand new." So, something on that. Yeah, with the Canada Post, Von Krul, someone else was telling me about that. Um, the Canadian Post, there was a some kind of strike at one time or another and some other kinds of things like that. Um, in the US, uh, I've had extremely good luck, with the postal service. Um, I'm sure there've been some mistakes. We've had letters delivered to the wrong houses, and someone will come over and say, "Hey, Bill, here's your letter for you," or I'll take it to somebody else. That happens. But for the most part, I've been pretty happy with uh, the U.S. Postal Service. Yeah, yeah. This is one of the things. There was worldwide inflation after COVID, and for a good reason. People weren't going back to work. One, because they were still sick. Some of them had died. A lot of people, that thing was really messed up international. So what happened here in the US, they all blamed it on the guy who happened to be the next president, and that was when the inflation came along, and so they really couldn't have dug a bigger hole, I think. Yeah, yeah. I tell you though, it's really funny. The US's biggest trading partners are still Canada and Mexico. A lot of people don't realize that, but they are. But I think we've lost on both ends of it. I know there are a lot of people in the liquor industry that want to keep the Canadians, buzz. they that broke down. Oh, you got a bad local one, Eric. What we had, it's really funny. For years, we've been where we live right now, we lived in the same house for about 25 years. We've been here, well, actually 26 years. And we got to know the postman, Steve. And so Steve would, and if something special was happened, Steve would take care of us and stuff. And then when Steve retired, they had this new one, and the new postal person screwed up for a while, which you'd expect them to do because they got a new route and everything. But finally, now we have this woman postal I don't know what they call it, a deliverer. She's great. So we're back to a good one again. We hope to set up those kinds of relationships. Yeah, that's no good, Eric. Man, that's no good at all. Wow. Yeah, there's this crap going on. I hope we don't have to put it up with it forever. Hmm. Boy, that's interesting about DHL. I tell you, I was speaking of which, I don't know. I live in a place. I do not live in a rich town or a rich area, but I live in an area with a lot of nice people. Okay, we just don't have that much crime. The town of Bloomfield has very low crime, and so you sort of like There was something my wife and I were got up the other day, and there were these 2 policemen in front of our house, and we like, "Well, what's going on?" And our policeman, "What's happening?" "Oh, somebody called, their smoke alarm went off or something," so they were right there. I mean, we have this incredible so maybe that's why, I don't know. Okay, Al, go rake leaves. Yeah, it's that time too. I gotta take off. But, hey, thank you all for showing up. We had some discussion anyway, and I wanna thank you all. Take care.